Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 134 of Games My Mom Found. I am Mike Albertin, and who's with me tonight?
This is Chris Dickerson of the Pretentious Nerds over on YouTube. I am what they call the expert consultant on there.
Nice. Well, welcome. Your first episode you're on with us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about.
You were the only person to respond to my ads for this game, so thank you.
Yeah, it's a little obscure. I get it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's one of those games that I love, and I'm just glad I found somebody to talk about it with me.
Yeah.
So before we go too far, I do want to say, if you're listening to this the day it came out, which some people do, you have 1 day about 1 to 2 days to finish voting the poll that we currently have for the animated movie, because this will come out on the 1st. I will let it run till Tuesday just to let it finish off. So if you still want to vote, please vote, because we currently have a tie, and I don't like a tie, so please go vote. For the animated movie poll you see in our Patreon, just as little as $1. And also we do have a new Patreon poll that we are starting for the month of August, which is going to be our first anime pilot test. So please go over there and you can go vote. And the 4 options are going to be Cowboy Bebop, Asteroid Blues, Outlaw Star, Outlaw World, that's the episode, Akuma no Riddle, The World is Full of Blank, and Case Closed, The Big Shrink. So you get to choose which one of those we're going to cover for pilot test. So a little as $1, you can go vote in our Patreon poll. All right, I should introduce what we're going to be talking about today. We are here to talk about a game that never came to America, not legally at least. Live a Live, made by one of my favorite developers ever, Square, and came out in 1994 for Super Nintendo.
Goodness. The year before I was born. No wonder.
So how did you first find this game? I want to ask.
All right, so it was the summer of 2015, because I was thinking about this earlier, and I was kind of on a binge of finding games that either didn't make it to America or were translated and brought that way. So I played Terranigma, Live Alive, and Mother 3 that summer.
Okay.
And I just obviously I think Mother 3 is the one that sticks out. This is my only Mother game I've finished, but I absolutely love the heck out of it. Incredible. Terranigma I wanted to finish. I think I got stuck later on, but super good. And then Live Alive was a game that I didn't really expect to love. I just was I just found it because I was going through English translations and popular stuff. And what I found was this game reminds me of Saga. I was the Saga games don't stick with me, but I'll try this one out because people say it's so good, and immediately fell in love with it. I just kept coming back to it, and I'm usually overwhelmed when I see a list of characters and they say, hey, choose one. You got 8 different stories to go through. And I'm just this game will never end. This is insane. And then they're just so well paced. Each individual story, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a solid 2 to 3 hours. And they have such good bite-sized stories, and they all come together so well. But yeah,
they really do. It's definitely an interesting game. That's for sure. And also, from my first time finding it is, I want to say it was 2001 or 2000. I mean, no, maybe not that early. Maybe 2003, or it was sometime we were getting in when my friend and I were getting into ROMs, and we had found a site called QualityROMs.com at the time that no longer exists, and they just had a handful of ROMs. And one of the games they had was an English translation of this, and they had a little review about it and talked about it. And we were both big Square fans, and we were always looking for new RPGs to play. And so we tried this out. I remember playing this game on a keyboard because we didn't have a controller in my friend's room, and we just sat. And I'd come over and I'd spend the weekend. I would just play this game while he was playing PS2, and I just wanted to play Live a Live on his computer because my computer couldn't handle it at the time. That's my first memory of this game.
Yeah.
And I want to say I finished it, but I don't know because the final boss and everything at the end did not look familiar. So I don't know if I ever actually beat it.
Really, the ending
until yesterday.
Yeah, that whole final sequence was the most RPG part of the game, of course. You know?
I mean, I think that's another interesting thing about this game. For those that don't know, which is most people that are listening to this episode, it's a turn-based RPG. But when you enter a battle, you're on an open plane that has a grid format where you move on the grid, and as you move, depending on how many turns essentially pass, the enemy then can move or interact with you, and your abilities that you choose in your attacks all based on this grid of where they will hit and where you need to be in parallel the enemy to make the attack work. And all attacks are different grids.
Yeah, it's a weird simplified tactics, a tactics game. And I always thought that was that was the first thing that kind of stuck out to me when the battle system starts, is that a lot of times, like, gosh, not to get into other things, but like Final Fantasy VI, I love to death. But man, I never clicked with the battle system as much as like even 5, like 4. I just prefer over 6. It's so strange. I know.
6 is one of the best games ever made. Blasphemy.
Yeah, it totally is. 100% is. But I for some just there wasn't enough there for me in terms of I guess how it teaches you. But anyway, Live Alive is very the combat is very simple, but I also think there's a level of depth to it that kind of makes it engaging, that keeps you each battle kind of like it never becomes a slog, because even if it did, everything changes as soon as you go to a new character.
Which is also very interesting about how this game plays. Also, I can't remember if I said that we both played English translation patches of this game, because neither of us, I assume, speak Japanese.
I wish I could.
There's no official translation, but there's a translation that's been out for years at this point.
Yeah, they've been trademarking it over and over again. I keep seeing it pop up in little news things. And considering Square's recent Saga releases and how they've been really pushing that out in a really cool and quality way, I honestly believe we'll see this game in about a year or two released on modern consoles in the same way that Saga Frontier and Romancing Saga has been.
So, funny thing, this game is not considered part of the Saga series.
Certainly. Yeah, just the inspiration is so...
Oh, it is kind of... I mean, I have never played a Saga game other than Saga Frontier, but this game kind of has it. 'Cause the whole theme of this game is when you start off the game, you have 7 different characters you can choose from. Each have a scenario that then leads into a final scenario, which is kind of like how Saga Frontier is, in a way. I don't know if they all lead into a final scenario, but you have different scenarios that all kind of interconnect.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, each Saga game is obviously its own weird experimental RPG, and this is just kind of I know during its development it was kind of talked about the director, I wish I remembered his name, wanted to do an experimental RPG, but Saga was already kind of doing that. So Square was okay, you do this other thing, and just kind of honestly made his own Saga release.
Yeah. I mean, that's one way. That's definitely a way to, yeah. That's what it is.
It's just I hope this game isn't Square has a lot of just properties that just kind of sit dead from the 90s, and they need to bring them back.
It all depends. From what I've heard from somebody once on a podcast, it has all been who stayed with the company and what franchises keep going. Final Fantasy, their bread and butter, that keeps going, but some of the other franchises, with Romancing Saga, the reason we keep seeing more of those is because whoever, the director of those games or the creator of it is still with the company, so they keep making those games, where some of the other franchises, like the Chrono franchise, those guys have all been gone, so they just move on from that franchise.
Oh, interesting.
That's what somebody said. I don't know how much fact there is to it, but it does make the one fact is the Romancing Saga guy is still there, and they keep making those games, so that's a fact.
Yeah. I guess good on Square Enix for not just trying to continue these franchises and burning them to the ground. I don't know.
I want more Chrono and I want more Xeno, but that's neither here nor there.
Xeno is one of my favorite games of all time, and I continuously am depressed that there's nothing to that.
Oh, and a funny thing, as I've been reading about this game actually got re-released in Japan only for the Wii U Virtual Console and then on the new 3DS eShop.
Oh my god.
So this game has come out since then, just they never ported it to America.
Yeah. That's so sad. It's the translation's good. Why not? I wish
you'd have to. Well, I mean, I guess in this day and age, you wouldn't have to edit the stuff that they have in here. They could just put it in there. It wouldn't matter.
It's like Mother 3, you have a perfect translation out and it just sits there.
That's another one that I don't that one I really don't understand why that's never came to America yet, because people really want that game.
Yeah. I think it's just case of Nintendo being Nintendo and kind of just doing whatever the heck it wants.
Yeah. That's probably, yeah,
even if money, even if they make a lot of money from it, they don't, I don't know. They have some particular way of doing things.
Nintendo's odd sometimes. So, think about this game is when you first boot it up and you first are looking at it, you get a select screen of 7 different characters that each will, show you a caveman, a cowboy, a ninja, and as they rotate around, you get to choose who you want to start with, and each one is set in a different time chapter, essentially a different chapter of history. Let's just say that's probably the best way to put it. Yeah. And so I want to know, who did you start with your first time when you played this game?
Yeah, I was thinking back to it just now. I didn't know what the game was at all, and I was just treated like a normal RPG, and I picked the knight character. And overall, like, I think, honestly, I don't think his is the best story, but I think it's still obviously still very good.
What do
And
you
I
mean by
remember,
at
like,
night? Because Orange Siege not there till way later.
yeah. And I remember picking that one. I was like, oh, this is fun. This is interesting. And just kind of going through it. But the one I picked after that, when I was like, okay, this game is strange. And the one I remember more, I picked Cube, the little robot. Yeah. And that's when the game clicked with me. Like, immediately, I was just so like, what the heck is going on? This is nothing like the night chapter I just went through. And just dealing with the AI, I guess very 2001 vibe.
Oh yeah, I wanna talk about Cube.
Yes. Let's go.
So Cube's chapter, because when I first played this game, I think I picked I picked the wrestler first because I was copying my friend. But so each chapter is a little bit different. But the one that we're going to talk about first, the futuristic chapter, which is the final one, I guess, whatever, it doesn't matter what order you take these in, is you play as a robot. And you have no combat at all in this chapter. You just wake up, you're on a ship, you just been built, and you just have to move around and talk to different NPCs or touch certain objects to trigger events, and that's all that the chapter is. And I remember as a kid, I'm like, this is the dumbest shit ever.
Really?
I didn't like it.
Really? Yeah, that was, man, it was the one that got me because it was just, I guess it was doing something so different than turn-based combat, but keep going.
But now, like when I was going through it, I was like, wow, this is actually super cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe I hadn't watched Alien yet, or I didn't care about Alien, because it's a whole science fiction chapter where you're on this ship that has a very like 90s technology vibe to it, like something from the Alien. Like 70s, 80s technology vibe looks like from the Alien. It has a very much looks like that ship, or that vibe of that ship, that type of science fiction.
Yeah.
And it's such a strange chapter because you really don't, you just talk to NPCs. You talk to this guy, things happen. You talk to this guy, and we will be, feel free to be full spoilers, of course, in this episode.
Oh yeah, certainly.
Because don't worry about that, because this game from 1994, I'm not worried anymore.
Just play it.
Yeah, and it's just so cool how it just all starts happening. Like early on, you have these two guys go out in an airlock to go fix an antenna that all of a sudden broke. And as they go out there, one guy his suit ends up rupturing, I think it was, or something. There's a malfunction where then he, suffocates to death.
Mm.
And, it's just all these little things like that they do. Like when you go and use a machine or anything, the text is all in green, and it reminds me straight up of Alien and the computer in 2001 Space Odyssey. Very much of that vibe to it.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, again, my whole reason why I didn't like this when I was a kid is there was no combat. There was no RPG elements to it. It was just run around the ship, talk to people. I mean, I used a guide, but for this playthrough, but you just talk to people, and then it would trigger the next thing. You continue on with the game, and it didn't click with me when I was a kid, but it clicked with me now. What did you like about it?
I mean, exactly that. Except the fact the reason I liked it was because there was no combat. Is because I think a lot of times, and of course I love turn-based JRPGs. That's my like bread and butter. But I like when games, my favorite thing in video games is when they put you in a world and ask you to explore and interact with it. And that is exactly what this does, is you go around the ship, you talk to people, you interact, and like that continues the story. And it tells I think a pretty interesting story. Just kind of how like Cube is interacting with his crewmates, and how he's obviously the only robot there, and how he ends up having to save the day. And it's such a claustrophobic chapter too. It's not like, yeah, it's not a world that you get to roam around. It's a ship, right? And everything happens within the ship. And I'm sorry to make this comparison, but it just comes to mind. It's a similar, like, I think of like Among Us, right? I think of like everyone's trapped in this ship together, and there's something going wrong, and there's this weird sense of satisfaction, I think, that you get from you're all together and something happening, and you have to get out. And there's just, I think, an innate excitement about that that I just really clicked with.
I mean, like when you have the captain, like you have different points throughout this little chapter where the captain will talk to you, but he's only on a computer screen. So somebody dies, he's like, well, that's unfortunate. And then he just goes away. And then I think it's after the second person dies, he says the same exact thing. Yeah. Or no, the antenna breaks, he says it. Then someone dies, he says it. And I think maybe someone else dies, he says the same thing again. And they're like, wait a second. And the whole thing starts to glitch out. They start realizing... captain's not, that ain't the captain.
It just goes in such a weird way, as opposed to like, it's every chapter in this game is obviously very different from the rest. It's just in a totally different genre, but sci-fi is obviously a lot more like a lot more crazy different than you would between like a ninja story and like a traditional fantasy story. Sci-fi is just all the way out there, and seeing what they can do with it was exciting.
I mean, I was surprised how much it got me this time. Like, you have these different people that are on the ship. You have a guy who's a military officer who isn't only on the ship because of their cargo, which is also interesting. And like, I love how the game kind of like, as you're going through this quest, if people start dying, you have one point where you break into the corporal's office, you find an email where it says the crew is expendable. All that matters is the weapon. And then you're like, okay, it must be the corporal that's trying to kill us because the weapon is all that matters in the cargo. And again, that's Alien right there.
Mm-hmm.
100% Alien reference, which I like that. And then I want to say it's shortly after that when the behemoth breaks free, it's a big green beast that was locked in the cargo that's just now running around your ship.
Yeah.
And you can also die different ways in this mission. I found out one. Games that don't touch. If you touch the airlock controls at one point, you can suck yourself out into the airlock and die.
Really?
Yeah. If you get hit by the behemoth at all, you instantly die. And he roams around certain areas of the ship, usually where you need to go, but he's easy to dodge if you just run past him.
Interesting. Yeah.
But you can die There's a couple different ways that you can just kill yourself by pressing buttons you shouldn't press.
Yeah, I remember doing that. Yeah, that's right.
But I mean, that's it add more of that tense of this murder mystery as you have things just progressing through. I mean, you have everybody except for the character that makes you, and the corporal ends up getting murdered in this. Like, at one point, you find out the captain's been dead this whole time, and it's just computers taking over.
Yeah,
and it's such an interesting chapter because one thing you do multiple times, you go make coffee for people. You just go make coffee and serve them coffee to continue the storyline as they're just talking, trying to figure out what to do on the ship and why is this happening? Why are people dying? What are we going to do?
Yeah. Such a cool little RPG alien, little alien RPG.
Yeah. And it ends up, you find out the computer had been corrupted or something of this whole time. You have to go in there and take out the computer. And that's when you fight this virus type thing, or one of the overarching themes of the same boss that they fight every time, at the end of each chapter is something to do with Odo is in the name. And that's the same thing you fight in this.
I never picked up on that. I don't think maybe I did. It's been a while, but wow. Yeah.
So that's the whole thing, and that's what it was. The Odo, whatever because Odo had to do with Orsteed, and then we'll talk about the end, the Demon King, and he's infecting a different timeline, and that's what it was in this. Is that he had been in there and he was affecting what was going on, and then you ends up wrapping up the little thing ends up wrapping up where you stopped it, and then the ship. Only 2 people are still alive, and then they end up, put them back in cryo sleep and are heading to Earth or wherever their destination was to get more help. And it's just a little cute chapter, but it's pretty damn dark.
Oh, yeah. And does a lot in it. And I guess to go to that battle and kind of why I clicked with this game even more is I remember that there's a big thing at the time that I struggled with, and it's like Terra Enigma didn't do it. Mother 3 kind of had in it, but like grinding, I was really just not like in the mood for. So just the fact that like these stories are so self-contained with little, like basically just no grinding at all, and it's very straightforward. And I remember getting, obviously the only time that you fight in this chapter with Cube is the very end. So it was just put you in it. It's a puzzle. At that point, it's less of a actual just JRPG fight, and it's more of a puzzle that you have to solve. And that's something that I really liked about it.
It works surprisingly well. Like you can fight one other thing in this game in his chapter for no reason. Well, so you get an item. You can do the Captain Square battles at one point if you go through a certain, like if you go and get a hidden key underneath the dead guy's bed at one point, you can then operate this game that has the same grid-like pattern, but you don't fight a boss. You just fight other enemies. You get an item or something, but I didn't do it. But the boss fight, you're right. It's just a puzzle. You have your abilities that Cube already has, and Cube has the ability to heal himself completely, and there is no MP in this game. So you can just use your abilities however you feel fit, which is also a nice feature.
Yeah, totally.
It's nice not having other things that govern it like a normal RPG.
Yeah, no, like an overwhelming list of options for you to use, and to figure out. It's just like, hey, it's just a battle.
Every chapter is so different. Like another chapter that I want to talk about, the one that I first played, not this playthrough, but on my first playthrough, is the wrestler, Masaru, I guess is how I say it.
Yeah, I think it's Masaru.
And his is just like a fighting game. It looks like Street Fighter. You go and you will pick, I think it's 6 different faces to choose from, and you'll pick whoever you want to fight first, and he'll just do little battles. I mean, that's just what it is. he'll do like one-on-one battles with different with different villains or different people in this tournament you have to beat, and you also have to learn their abilities. Like if you don't play it correctly and you just don't do it the way you're supposed to, and you don't let them do their particular move, you will not be able to proceed if you don't have those right moves. I'm pretty sure you'll fail.
Yeah. Gosh.
It's really cool though. It's just a little fighting game. Like he shows him training. His little sprite is training, and it shows him like, I'm gonna be the strongest, and he's fighting different like a wrestler and different characters. One that looks like Lieutenant Surge from Pokemon Red, and it's a really cool little chapter because again, there's no grinding in this one either. You just fight, but you should fight in particular orders. You learn the right moves in order to beat them all better, which is what I did.
And again, that simplicity and that just kind of that straightforwardness is what I loved about it. And it's like the stories, of course, they're not in-depth stories. They're just satisfying. I think they're relatable. I think it's just seeing these characters and just like, this is your goal, this is your due. It's very reminiscent of like, I think old NES games where of course the story is in the instruction booklet and you're just playing the game, and they give a little bit more dialogue over to be more relatable and live a live. But I think that simplicity of the game is there, and you immediately attach to yourself to these characters in the same way that you would an old NES game. And I think it just makes it like you just focus on the gameplay and you become attached to the characters through the gameplay. And yeah, it's exciting.
I do like the list of like wrestlers he beats. Like one is completely a riff on Hulk Hogan and stuff.
God, yeah, that's right.
Like Max Bomber, I think his name is, or Max something. But yeah, it's essentially just Hulk Hogan. It even looks like Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, I'm just seeing a picture of him.
I love that. I love the little references to it. And I love the fact that each one is so different. And the final boss for Max Morgan is his name. But the final guy you fight is called Oldie Oldbright, which is like this fighter who ended up killing everybody that you just got done fighting. He killed them all, and now you're fighting him. And it always makes me feel like you're fighting Sagat. He looks like Sagat to me from Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, he totally does. Yeah.
And it's just like you're fighting him out, and you're not even in the tournament anymore. You're fighting him out in some wilderness area because he killed everybody, so you're defeating him as revenge.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot. And then the final scene of this little chapter is him looking out at the ocean, and somebody's like, if I beat him, I'll be the strongest in the background.
Yeah.
Which is just there. But it again, real simple little chapter. And it's just, again, something very different. And also, the font is different for every single character you play as. Everything with the font is different. The little icon that you use to select is different, too. In cubes, it's a hook. I like how they did that. They made it different each one.
Yeah, it really adds a level of uniqueness to every chapter. And just thinking back to it, because it's like coming back to me as we're talking about it. Gosh, yeah, that whole, because like that is engaging, I think. It doesn't need to tell itself like a huge story, but I think it's just the simplicity of it. It really works in its favor. And just kind of trying to riff off a bunch of different like styles of genres and movies. Of course, I think, it's more movies in the terms of this, but they do it in just such a good way. Yeah, of course.
You have a training montage of him just in the room with the music playing, him just training, hitting a punching bag, sit-ups. Oh, yeah, this is just rock.
Yeah, it's just like playing seven different movies, and I think they really just pull it off well. And I think the tragedy of this game is it's something that is not really done or has been touched on before or since then. And of course, there are games where you choose several different characters. Of course, the saga exists. Of course, games like Trials of Mana exist where you choose different characters, but they never have distinct genres in and of themselves. They'll have distinct stories, but they never feel totally different from one another because eventually they do obviously come together and so forth, so on. But this just really nailed an entirely different feeling game each time, and all 7 of them are enjoyable.
And that's what's such a pity to me, or maybe not pity is the right word, but it's too bad this game has never been ported yet to America, because so many people have no idea what the hell I'm talking about who would enjoy this.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to get an emulation. Emulation's easy, but like stuff like this, I feel like, it hasn't come to America yet, and it came out in 1994, just emulated. I don't think anybody cares because it's not coming. At least it hasn't come yet. They're not making money off it here.
It never hit its viral, time to be popular here. I think, gosh, it's just the 90s before internet really took off, before games were, as accessible and popular as they are now. I think people just I think they see this kind of like these short little stories. And I just didn't click with it as much as I wanted to. I guess the same way as like Mother 3 is so easily accessible now. And I always see tons of people, everybody wants it. Everybody's clamoring for it, but it's so easily playable. I'm like, just go play it. Nintendo's not going to do anything.
No. Man,
Yeah.
I have started it once and I couldn't get into it for some reason.
Huh.
I got maybe an hour, 2 hours into it and I just stopped playing.
The beginning is very slow, I will admit.
I just wasn't. I think I just wasn't I think I'd already started the podcast at that time, so it's hard for me to want to play an RPG when I play a game every week for the show.
Oh, yeah.
That could have been part of it. I don't remember anymore. I just know I tried it and I just didn't feel it and I stopped.
Did you like Earthbound?
No, not really.
Okay, yeah. See, I didn't really care for Earthbound. I wish I did, man. That's something I wish I could have gotten into. I think it's a little bit too dated.
I just don't. I beat it. I beat it before I started the podcast. I went because if I start a game, I force myself to finish a game in most cases.
Hey, if you can do that, more power to you.
I have to. Especially if I get a certain point, I will finish that game almost no matter what, unless the game like Beautiful Joe, where it would not let me. I will force myself to, and that's just how I play. But yeah, No Mother 3 is a game I someday I want to go back to. It's got to be on the show, and then I'll make myself play it.
Yeah, if you force yourself through it, that beginning, I think it picks up.
Same like with this game. This is a game that I put on the show because I realized midway, like I had always had the impression in my head, like I beat this game back when I first found it in the early 2000s, and I beat it again at some point in the last 10 years. I realized I never played it again all the way through because I don't think I even beat it in the past. Because when I got to the final boss and all that stuff, I had no recollection of it, so I don't think I ever beat this game.
How far did you got? Did you finish all the characters? Or?
Yeah, I got to the final chapter. I had memories of everything up to that. I just didn't remember the ending stuff and the final boss. None of that was familiar to me. So I think I got to the end and then I just kept grinding and never finished it.
Really?
I think. So this was the first time I beat the game, I'm pretty sure, when I played it for the show this past week. So another one of the chapters that I want to talk about is a chapter that I went into with no anticipation because I remember not liking it as a kid. And I'm like, it's stupid. And that is the Cowboys chapter, Sunset.
Really? You didn't like that as a kid either?
No. I thought I liked RPGs, and this is another chapter that's not an RPG chapter. You're a cowboy who rides into town. You end up, and it's a Clint Eastwood film. Now that I've seen Clint Eastwood films, it's essentially a Clint Eastwood movie, is what it is. And I think it made me appreciate it more now. Like the whole concept is you come into this town, and this town is gonna be attacked by some marauders or bandits that come in around and attack this town every so often and take their stuff and leave. And you end up killing one of the guys because you get into a fight with them in the bar, and you're like, oh god, you just started something. And then this bounty hunter comes with you and is trying to kill you. He joins you because you both, and you have like a little cool, like I do like that little scene now where they're standing outside the bar and they have a little, shoot off, but they don't shoot each other. They shoot the two guys that are hiding behind the tree.
Yeah, I remember that. That's a good scene.
Like it's kind of a cool chapter because since you go into this town, it's a little town like 8 buildings, and you go to the bar and they see the wanted poster, and then they're like, oh, but we need your help, and like the son of the sheriff takes the sheriff badge and puts it on you because the sheriff is a wuss and won't stand up to these people. It's actually a really cool little chapter, and the whole point of this chapter is that you have this whole bandit group is coming to attack you, and you can't really beat them by yourself. Well, you can, but it's not a very hard boss fight. So you have like 8 hours to go run through the town and find different items that you can then make, or find different items you can, like a carrot, you can make a Molotov cocktail. You find oil, bottles, rope, a shovel. You find different items, and then after you collect all the items, you go back to the bar, and then you give the item to the different townsfolk that are in the bar, and they'll go set up traps for you. And the traps will then dictate how many enemies survive when you do the final fight. The one real fight in this chapter.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I did follow a guide for this, I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't as a kid, and that's why I had a harder time, because there were a lot more people left alive, where this time I followed a guide, because also the townfolk each had different speeds, so if you didn't give yourself a lot of time you come back, certain people will not finish in time. They don't finish the trap isn't set, and it won't help you.
Yeah.
But it's such a cool little part, and I also didn't realize as a kid that each trap is only used once. Like you'll get multiple carrots, multiple different items, but they only get used once.
Yeah.
It's cool.
It's another example of this game. Just like every single chapter is something going for it in a unique way. It's just so cool that like this. It's almost like, oh man, I don't know how to say it. It's like every single chapter feels so distinct and just has such a really cool idea in it, and how they pull it off is such a way that it's just. I don't think any chapter in this game feels like a traditional video game. I guess aside from like the night one, maybe.
Yeah, just source sheets at the final.
Yeah, that's true. It's just like every single chapter in this game feels like its own little event, little adventure. And like I said before, and I think this goes to the movies side of things. It takes genres that we like and stories that we like in these genres, such as a Clint Eastwood film, and the idea of like protecting a town, obviously very classic Western. Group of bandits coming in, lone wolf has to take care of them, and just how they get to that very quickly. They get to that sense of we need to like that main plot point of protecting the town. They get to that very quickly, and how they make it unique, how they take their own spin on it, is what makes this game so incredible.
Like even this chapter, I mean, I came into it not wanting to play it, being like, "Oh, this is stupid," and I had a great time just following the guy, grabbing the trap, setting up the traps by giving it to different townsfolk, and you kind of making sure I did each of the ones that the guide said, okay, only do one of these, and I did all this. You even get like, and then watching the humorous thing as all the bandits come, jumping in on their horses and different things happen to them. They blow up, they fall. One guy sees a nude poster and falls off his horse. Like it cracked me up, and that's like and it was just fun. And then you get a simple boss fight once you kill everybody. You just got to take out one guy who looks like he's from the Confederate soldier. What he looks like to me as a Gatling gun. I mean, kind of the look they were given.
Yeah, I remember.
One thing that was told to me a long time ago, which I'm pretty sure is accurate, is that the Japanese are very like fascinated with the Wild West era for us because they didn't have that. Where we are very fascinated with ninjas because we didn't have that as a culture, I feel. And I think that was another thing. That's one reason why this chapter is in this game. Because for a long time, you didn't have any Wild West games. I mean, now you have Gun. That came out a long time ago to Red Dead Redemption. You have stuff that filled that hole. But at this time, there was very, very little Wild West, I feel, in the 90s.
That's true. And if there was, it was very like simple, like
Sunset Riders.
Simplified. Yeah. It's just kind of more or less like arcadey shooters, not really a story perspective. Type of Western.
I can't think of any Western game other than Sunset Riders from this era.
Oh gosh, yeah. There's probably more off the top of my I can't think off the top of my head, but none of them in my that I'm thinking of have storylines that are more than just like dialogue, one word.
I mean, you didn't have anything like Red Dead Redemption that came out way later, and Red Dead Revolver, PS2 era.
Yeah, of course. I guess they're definitely unless it's something really like hidden. There's no. I think Western RPG in the 90s.
Not till Wild Arms on PS1.
Oh, good point.
But that's late 90s. I think that's late 90s, right?
Yeah, I think it's 98, 99. I could be wrong.
I can't remember that. Yeah, that's the only time you get a Western RPG. So this would have been the first in 94.
Yeah. And this is so traditional. Wild Arms, I don't know if I never played Wild Arms 1, so I don't know if that's as traditional, of course, as come in, protect the town.
I don't think so. No. I've never gotten far in Wild Arms, but I'm pretty sure it's a futuristic take on a cowboy theme. If I remember correctly. Yeah. But like the other thing, when you fight this boss in the Wild West thing, when you beat him, he turns into a horse.
That's when I remember that. I don't remember that.
Turns into a horse because you find out that apparently when this whole group had gotten destroyed by I forget who it was, if it was supposed to be Indians or if it was Union soldiers, I can't remember, but they got massacred and the only survivor was a horse. And this horse had taken all the hate and all the pain and became had become these bandits. And again, the guy's name that you're fighting is Oded or something. Odeel. There's an Ode. Or no, it's just called Deal, but there's an Ode somewhere in this. I know that, but I can't remember where.
I think I watched JoJo in 2013, so I think whenever I saw Dio, I think that's where my head went, and it never went. That's never connected the other way.
Yeah, I just knew that's where it was going with this because I was looking for it this time when I played it. So that could have been part of it why I knew it was there. But I like the fact that the chapter can be real difficult if you don't set any traps and you can just sit in the bar and just keep having drinks and wait until the whole time passes and then you fight a giant boss fight.
Yeah.
It's just cool that option is there.
The fact that there is an element of player choice in this game that you would think like there's already so much going on in it. There's so much like so many different characters. There's so many different stories that not only does it stop at just telling you the story, it lets you have like consequences if you don't do certain actions. Each story kind of has different paths that open up based on what you do or don't do.
It's very interesting. It definitely stuck with me a lot more this playthrough than I realized before. So I want to talk about the last chapter that I did because I was scared of it.
I'm scared of it. Okay.
Yeah, a little. So the last chapter that I finally tackled was the ninja chapter.
Okay.
Out of the 7 because it's the longest of the set, so I was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna wait to do this later. But the ninja chapter I think is also another one that's very interesting. So you're this ninja that's been sent to go assassinate some guy in this castle, and there's mythical type things going on, but each character, like some characters have special abilities, and this guy has an ability where if you hold down a button, he can cloak himself. And so the idea is that you are sneaking through this big tower. You can actually do this whole level without killing anyone if you want to. You actually get the best sword in the game for him if you don't kill anyone, and it wants to keep track of all the kills that you get.
Dang, I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, you can just cloak, you can just hide. I mean, there's a whole guide of how to do this with 0 kills. I didn't do that. I killed 82 people. I was 100 kills is the max. I was trying to get my 100, but I just lost interest near the end because there's no point.
Yeah.
But as an RPG, I'm killing everybody. But yeah, you actually can run around, cloak yourself when an enemy is nearby so they don't see you, and then run past them. Like you're in a huge complex that you go in the attic, you climb around. There's actually 2 optional boss fights in this little section. I know when I played this as a kid, I never even gotten the second of the 3 characters. I missed him completely.
Oh, really?
When I was playing it. Yeah, he's in a cell. You have to drop down in a cell, and you have to beat the boss fight in a certain way. You have to defeat all these little souls in the boss fight room, and then you have to hurry and rush to the boss. Otherwise, if you miss one of the little enemies floating around, he'll resurrect himself. And as a kid, we couldn't figure that out, so we thought the room was an automatic death trap, and we just didn't go in there again. But that's how you get the second character.
That player choice is insane.
Yeah, and the fact that you can do this whole chapter with 0 kills or 100 kills or whatever kills you want to do, I mean, that's really cool. And you even get something if you don't kill women. Like there's be random women you see you can just kill just because they don't put up a fight or anything. You get experience, but you can just kill whoever the hell you want. You'll see random people sitting around on beds that don't even attack you unless you talk to them. It's such an interesting chapter. There's one part you have to literally sit in a room and wait a minute for the enemy to drop from the ceiling if you want to get the kill.
Wow.
There's also a password system that goes on. They show you early on where there's 2 different words of the password. Every time the bell dings, the password changes. And the game will tell you when the bell dings, and you're supposed to pay attention to it to see when things are happening. I didn't care. I just gave them the wrong answers. I could kill everybody. But again, another way for you to sneak by people when you have to. You give them a password.
Gosh, this chapter has so many puzzles in it. It's man, I feel like when I played it in 2015, I probably bypassed most of them.
There's a trap guy you got to fight with traps you have to get by, and there's a lot of interesting stuff to this chapter. It's a really good chapter.
Dang, yeah. I guess that's where when I first played it, I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did. But every single time, because I mean, honestly, it's a fault, but especially back in the day, it's like when I just see like a ninja chapter and I'm just like, oh, okay. It's like I was just kept waiting for the boring chapter. I kept waiting for that one I wouldn't like because it just bound to happen. I was like, okay, there's something boring is going to be here. It's just, I'm going to have to go through just repetitive combat. I just won't end up liking it. And then every single time they change things up. Every single time they make it fresh and exciting. And this a ninja chapter where you would just expect to be sneaking through a mission, going through and doing fights. They have this whole set of different traps, styles just to get through it.
Yeah, and you can even get 2 different characters in this chapter. I didn't get one of them because I didn't get an item to drop where you get another, you get a robot that looks like you.
Oh, I remember that.
Oh, Robo. I never got him. I'm only looking at a thing right now online because there's a boss you have to fight and you have to beat him a certain way, which I did, but then he didn't drop the items. So I said, oh, well, and I just moved on with the game.
Mm-hmm.
I was on time constraints. So I was trying to beat this game in time for the show. So I was I don't have time to screw around.
Yeah, this game, that's the thing. It is on the shorter side, but it can be made. It's made to be replayed,
Yeah. You can also, once you beat a chapter, you can replay the chapter again and again if you want to. It's there, and before you play Orsteeds.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that's very interesting about the game. But no, the Ninja is just, it's a really good, it's a giant mansion that you're in that can get very confusing because there's hidden doors, there's trap doors. In order to get to the final area where the final boss is at, you have to go through some hidden doors at different points. Like I got lost at one point because I stopped using the guides because I was just doubling back to do something, and I had a hard time finding my way back to where I wanted to be. It took me a bit, and I was like, okay. And another thing we hadn't mentioned yet, but as you have other characters in your team, they follow behind you, and if they touch an enemy, you also start a fight. And I love RPGs where enemies follow behind you.
I did not know that. I didn't remember
it. I always been a big fan of that. Yeah, and the Ninja chapter is, I think, one of the more complex ones because it has two optional bosses. One is a giant fish that I did not fight because I tried and he killed me, so I didn't bother again. And there's some other thing you can fight to unlock a really good weapon too, but I didn't bother with it. But it's a very cool chapter. And then as you go through, you finally will end up confronting the actual boss at the end of it. But also one thing I do want to mention is when you get to the end of this chapter, if you didn't kill any women, a woman will run up to you and give you 2 special items if you avoided killing all the women. You can go back and kill them after you get the item just because if you want to get 100 kills, but you can avoid I didn't bother at that point because I kind of want to get 100 kills, but they're like, you get nothing for getting 100 kills. You get something if you get 0 kills, but nothing for 100. So I'm like, doesn't matter. I'm leveled up enough.
There's a lot of secrets and just hidden stuff in this little chapter.
This is like I said, this is the longest chapter, and it's probably the most complicated chapter too, because you can get screwed up pretty bad if you miss certain things, or if you are trying to avoid people, you can get messed up because you won't be leveled up enough. I mean, like I said, I never got the second character, which is actually really good because he has an ability when he hits them, he kind of paralyzes them for a turn. You can skip their turns. He's really useful, and I never got him because I didn't know you could. So it's a really good chapter. Oh, what chapter should we talk about next? We got the few that we got left. Another one you want to mention?
I want to touch on the caveman one.
Okay.
And just kind of like another weird one. So I am I didn't care for his character design. That's kind of what I based it off. He was one of my last ones because I just saw him and I was like, oh, I don't care for cavemen. Like that's just whatever. But
that's how I felt.
That was my initial reaction to it. And again, I don't remember too much of like exactly in depth in the chapter, but I just remember like actually getting like clicking with it and just kind of how like there's the tribe, right? Where you like walk there, you were a part. There's like a village, or I guess whatever you can call it.
It's a village or a settlement. Either word works.
With them, and like, there's more to it than just being a little annoying little caveman that just kind of he doesn't speak, right?
Nope. Nobody talks. They all talk in all their bubbles are just different images of what they want. Like there'll be images of the girl, stuff like that.
That's right. It's just. I think probably one of the best things about this game is its charm, right? Every single chapter has a very unique charm to it. And of course, it's weird. It's funny. It's quirky. Don't you fight isn't the like a T-Rex or something that you fight?
The final, the Odo thing you fight as a giant T-Rex. As it starts off, you see, which reminds me of King Kong, you see this guy on this platform above a cave, and they talk about this girl they're going to bring, and then because they're going to sacrifice her, then the girl escapes and then it's running to your settlement or your caves. And there's no dialogue at all. Just caveman just running. The cavemen are idiots. One guy will run into see different people fall for just different reasons. They run into a wall. They're just stupid. But it's actually so when I was in this chapter, I had no interest in it at first because I remember not liking it the first time I played it. So I was kind of like, I'll play it this time because I should. But I actually had a lot of fun with it. It's actually really humorous. There's no text, just to watch these characters just make little bubbles of different emoticons in it, and that's how they communicate.
Yeah, and I remember it being just kind of sweet, right? With the girl and the caveman. Does he have a name? I just don't remember.
Pogo.
Okay, thank you.
So Pogo starts off in a room with this monkey companion that you have. You have to punch him in the face to start your thing. And you get punched all the time. Like if you talk to a guy when you're not supposed to go into a door you can't get into, he'll punch you. Like there's just a lot of really dumb stuff. And one of the things about this chapter is much more like an RPG than some of them are, where you have to get crafting items in order to make things. You can make weapons. Like you can actually, in one of the first rooms, which I never knew about this until I read my guide, where you have a room, you talk to a guy, another guy will come in the room. You have to talk to every guy until 19 guys run into the room. You talk to the 20th guy and you get a bunch of items. And it's just weird little things where you're actually supposed to do that because that's the only way to get a certain item that you need to make some of the weapons.
Yeah.
That's something I didn't do it because I couldn't get it to work, but that's what the guy was telling me to do. But it's just a really cool little aspect of the whole story of this thing is just you trying to go and get meat at first, and then you end up trying to rescue a girl because the girl ends up sneaking in, and there's some funny ass scenes too where she ends up doing a little heart symbol, and I guess if you feed her a certain food, she'll flash you too at one point.
Oh my God.
And the thing about Pogo Chapter, I think, is that like because some of the characters have a different ability when you press. I think it's Y. His is he'll sniff, and a little cloud will come up, and you can use that cloud to see where random battles are going to be.
Oh, that's right.
And it's such a. I had no interest in playing this chapter, but I actually leveled in this chapter because you can.
Really, I never did.
And you have to go through some stuff to get the girl to join you. You have to like put meat in the. You have to give her a bunch of like meat that you got from animals that you killed, and she'll come out of the haystacks. And if you give her a bone, she'll throw the bone back at you and hit you in the face. I did that too. But it's just very humorous, and the whole thing is that this girl had brought in free that was supposed to be sacrificed, and then these other cavemen come and attack you and take the girl, destroy your little town, and then escape with her. And you have to go after them and to get her back. But she's actually the most powerful character of the three.
Yeah.
She has an ability at level 12 or level 10 they call Lala that does like 400 points of damage when the boss only has 600 health. So final boss of this chapter. So yeah, once you get that, you're just like, boom, it's over. But
another thing of just like the stories being so simple yet so engaging. Yeah, just how they do that, and just being so silly, being so stupid, but providing you with enough like enjoyment, enough charm to where I honestly thought it was like a sweet. I remember it being a sweet little story between the girl and the like Pogo.
It is actually with no dialogue. It is, and like the rival guy that you're fighting from the other clan that's trying to capture her, who's naked besides a lizard on his junk. Where when he attacks you, one of his attacks will shoot the lizard out and it'll blur out his privates. Like it's just hilarious. It's stupid, but it's funny.
Yeah.
It's just it's a creative little game. And each chapter, like even this chapter, which was one of my least favorite as a kid, I spent hours just leveling. I didn't need to, but that just came out in me, and that's just what I just leveled. And it's a really cool little chapter. And Pogo actually became one of the best characters in the game. Actually, I used him in the final.
Yeah, I still never used him in the final because I was just like caveman now.
I was too until the guy told me to. There's also there's also an optional boss in his chapter. You fight a giant mammoth because the idea is you can fight some of these optional bosses and get certain equipment that you then put on the character. So then when you do the final chapter, they'll have that equipment with them. I didn't care, but
yeah,
it's cool that it's there.
Yeah, totally.
And you also and then when you finish all those chapters, the whole thing is you end up getting back to where the girl is, and you go to rescue her, and you guys end up because she's been tied to a pole to be sacrificed to a giant dinosaur. You fall down the hole with your rival, and the rival end up working together to fight Odo, this big dinosaur.
Yeah.
And I like that. It reminded me of Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, just a nice little sweet story. It's something that sells out a lot.
And at the ending of each little chapter, when you beat them, it shows all the characters kind of doing whatever they did at the end. You know, like they all had kind of like, it shows them as the credits are rolling, you know, them doing stuff. Like they succeeded. Like for this one, it shows the monkey having sex with like 8 different monkeys.
Oh my God.
You know, monkeys that run into a cave and they have little hearts all around.
Yeah,
so yeah, that comes back to play in the final chapter if you did his special ending. So that brings us now to only 2 chapters left.
Yes.
The one that I gravitated towards when I was a kid, and I saved for second to last, was the Mecha chapter, which you play as Akira, which is supposed to be like a punk. I call it like a punk future, I think is a good way to put it.
Yeah, gosh, I'm trying to remember more of this chapter because I remember this was one of the first ones I clicked because, I mean, it's mecha, you know, it looks cool. Mm-hmm. It's the most anime, I think, aesthetic, you know, of the entire, of each one. And that's obviously what I gravitated towards. And I remember there was like a city map, right?
There is.
Yeah, I remember that being really cool. And I remember the park. I don't remember much else.
He's a psychic kid who wakes up in a park, and then the game kind of shows you early on that he has the ability to read minds, where it makes you hit the Y button to read people's minds throughout the chapter to progress it. Because so many characters have like a specialty, and that's his. But it's very like it's a very cool chapter. You're an orphan who was an orphan because your father was a police captain and got killed by these gang members. And these gang members have like skulls on their heads and stuff, and you end up getting attacked at the park, and you have to. And the whole, like part of the thing is it has this world map that you go on to that you were mentioning, and you can go to a few different buildings as it progresses the chapter. But the enemies will spawn, and as you level up fighting these enemies, the enemies you fight will keep changing, which is also kind of cool.
That's right. Yeah.
Every time you level up, they change the format of what you're fighting. Yeah. And the whole point of this chapter, well, not point. I shouldn't say whole point. What you have to do is you go to this orphanage that you're from, and you end up having to like. Again, this game being very different, you have to talk to certain NPCs that trigger different things. And you can also get a lot of items in this game are hidden in chests, or not even chests, but just hidden on bookshelves and pots. And it does that all the time in this game. You have to check everything to find items. Like, hell, in this chapter, there's a part where if you talk to certain people, there's one point the girl that runs the place goes away from the washing machine. And you go and sit, you have to talk to this kid and go sit on the toilet, and the kid will keep bringing you different items that he's stealing from the washer. Because you're trying to get her panties. You steal her jeans, you steal everything, you steal her shirt, and then you finally steal her panties, and she comes in and yells at you. And if you wait and if you don't leave, the kid will run back in with her panties. Which is a piece of equipment you can wear. It's a helmet.
Wow.
It's stupid, but she calls you a pervert and everything. She's like, "You're a pervert." But it's just funny.
Yeah, it's good.
So stupid. I mean, I remember laughing as a kid. I'm like, wow, this is dumb, but it's I'm like, this would probably be changed if it came to America, but at least back then it would have been.
Yeah. And
it's a good chapter. It's one of the longer chapters where you do a lot of different fights. You end up, the whole point is you're trying to operate this giant robot, which you can't operate at first. And you're trying to defeat the Crusader gang. Like, and one thing it talks about in this chapter, they liquefy humans. Or liquefy people to put them inside robots, and you get a turtle that dies and gets liquefied and put into a robot turtle that becomes your ally.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I also played Xenogears around this time, and I remember being like, this is just a common trend in my life right now.
It's a very odd chapter. Like, it also, this is a chapter they mentioned wash your hands multiple times, and there's one part where, in order to operate this giant mech, you have to touch a book, touch a statue, run down the stairs and make a prayer, run back up these stairs, which is like 6 screens, wash your hands, then go to the toilet to start this mech. It's really strange, but it's amusing. Like, it's a very amusing chapter, which can play differently because you have to go to certain places and talk to certain people. If you didn't talk, and the one thing I had a problem with in this game originally is that I wouldn't talk to people sometimes. So if I didn't talk to certain NPC, it would not trigger an event to happen. And it's very much about that. And this one, you have to mind read certain NPCs to get events to trigger. I think that's also very cool.
Yeah. Again, it just plays so different. And it's such a different style. Of course, the mecha thing is what that gets me.
It's a pretty good chapter. It's like there's a part where you have to go inside an office building and you can do a different way. It's a maze of an office building, and you have to go up there and confront somebody. But you can, as I was reading the guy told me to do it one way. I just ran around the building and killed everybody until I found my exit. But it was fun. And also this chapter is very notorious for it, where you'll have multiple enemies in a room or in a battle where one is powerful like a robot or something, but all you have to do is just kill the weaker guy and then everybody dies. But you don't get items then. You won't have a chance of getting items. So it's kind of a cool risk reward where I would try, but I could never succeed in killing, so I would just kill the weaker guy and just get it done with.
Yeah. Dang.
But it's a really good chapter. I mean, and you find out that, like, as the chapter progresses, you find out that one of the characters that joins you actually kills your father. They burn down your orphanage at one point.
Yeah.
But the way that... So it has some, like, deep, dark stuff, but the way that the chapter ends is you finally get the strength to operate this mech, this giant mech, and you have to go to a Buddha, like, temple, and the statue comes to life that is in this water you find out is not really water, but all liquefied humans that they kill. Like, over 2,000 people they turn to liquid.
Yeah, that's
a little messed up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And just, man, again, I really loved how the combat in this scenario worked. I'm starting to remember, it's like using just not having to level up, not having that final battle be in the mech, and just kind of, I don't know. I always was not like relieved at not having to grind or anything. That's always something that's really important. And I think the combat system was like, it wasn't hard, but it wasn't easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely has some flexibility to it because some of the moves you have, they don't explain a lot of what your abilities do with the descriptions.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's just good chapter. I remember it being one of my favorite. I just wish I remembered more about it.
It is a good chapter.
Yeah.
And then that brings us to only one of the main chapters left to talk about, which is the monk, which is a very interesting chapter because the character that you pick is not the one that you play as for long. So every other chapter, you pick the character, and that's the character that you are. In the Kung Fu chapter, you pick a monk, and his whole thing is he's trying to pass on his art, his martial arts, to somebody else. And you have a few different scenes. You have to go and you have to go collect three different students in different places. And the way that this chapter works is that you can choose who to train will survive. Because there's three different students, and depending on who you train, that's the one that will. And you do like these little battles where you fight them, and they learn your moves. Where you're only, I think the first time we played this, we did each character like a little bit, thinking that okay, we want to help each one, but in all honesty, you're supposed to pick one, whoever you want, and then train them the most. And one's really fast, one's stronger, one's the medium, like a normal beat 'em up or a combat type game. You have three different characters.
Yeah. God,
when I was a kid, I thought, because my friend played this first, and he thought, oh, you can only save the one guy. You can, because that was just who had survived when he did it. Mm-hmm. But it turns out, as I was reading, you can pick whichever one of the three that you want. Do you remember which one you picked?
I'm looking through them real quick. Because I do. I remember being kind of, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Okay. I'm looking through the characters. I'm pretty sure it was Yuan. Yeah.
Okay. That's the medium one.
Yeah.
The average guy. That's who I picked too.
Really,
but that's because we did this originally. We thought he was the only one that can survive, but he's not. I found out this playthrough he's not. All three can survive.
Game being able to again, this is I feel like the most different in terms of. I mean, we keep saying that each chapter is so different from the rest. But I remember doing this chapter and being like, okay, what's the deal with this? And just as you go around and you actually get to teach your students and train them and being able to choose them is so incredibly unique and cool.
You have to use whatever move that you use on the student when they level up. That's what they learn. So the whole idea is that each battle you want to use just one move, so they learn that move when they level up, and you're passing on your arts.
That's what an incredible idea.
It's really cool, and the fact that depending on who you train depends on who survives. Because at one point you go to town to go take out some ruffians, and and then the ruffians then attack your little school, and they kill the other two students, and you come back, and your other two students are dead.
Again, very dark.
Yeah, and he buries them too on the mountain, and then that's when then he's like, okay, I'm done, and he goes to cause revenge on the people who killed him. He goes to this temple, and you have to. And depending on whichever student that survived that you chose, essentially by training the most, will then join you a different part throughout the chapter when he goes there. And you have to just go through, which really feels like a martial arts movie, where you just go in each room and you just take out a bunch of guys. And they just get harder and harder as you progress through.
Yeah.
Until you finally you fight tigers, and you finally get to the end where you get into a big room with a giant table, and the guy will introduce all these people to this is this guy, and this is this guy, and they fight, and you talk to them and fight each one, or you fight each set of them one by one, and it's really cool. It really felt like a martial arts movie. Yeah,
and the fact it's such each story in this game, I think, is quite is easy to get invested in. Especially, I feel like this one might be one of the highlights, and just how it is able to tell such a emotionally driven story in a very short amount of time as you train your students and then dying and then enacting revenge and getting to basically your choice of who gets to be carried on. It's just the level of player choice. And in JRPGs, of course, are notorious for not really having much player choice, and you kind of just they are just A and B stories. This one, despite having already 7 different choices to choose from character wise, even gives you more in each chapter.
which is what's so cool. And like you can also you can screw yourself in this one too by not training your student enough so that when that student is the only one character you have, they're not going to be powerful enough to finish the fight.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of cool too. I wouldn't like it if I didn't know it was, prepared, but I did get a kick out of it, and I like the different and just all the different boss fights that you do when you get to this table, and it's like just felt very like a martial arts movie to me. It's like, okay, now you get to this is this person, and you fight these different groups, and then finally you fight like an old man, which I guess was the guy's master before you have the final fight with Odar, the old guy. That also is cool to me, where he ends up trying to trick you and has two assassins to try to kill you instead of him.
Yeah,
and then this when your master sacrifices himself, which then gives you the energy to fight him and the rage to kill him. Like it's just such a cool chapter.
Yeah,
it feels like a Bruce Lee movie. It really does.
Yeah, a really good storytelling too in this chapter.
Mm-hmm. It was another one that I played this chapter second because I was excited for this chapter because I remember liking this one. I did the wrestler first again just because, but I was excited for this chapter. And it held up a lot more than I thought it would.
Yeah, I feel like the whole game holds up a lot.
Yeah. And then after you beat the 7 chapters, you unlock a hidden chapter, which wasn't there before. And when we first started talking about it, you said that was the one you played first? Or did you mean a different one?
Oh, I think, gosh, I totally forgot about the knight being the last one. Wow.
Yeah. You don't get the knight till...
Yeah, it leads right into the final chapter.
Yeah.
God, then I think Q must have been my first one.
Okay.
Yeah, Jesus.
I like the Knights chapter. It starts off like very basic RPG type stuff. Oh, you're a knight, you won a tournament. Oh, the princess got kidnapped. Oh, you got to go save, And it's a knight and a wizard, and you just go and have to go rescue her and fight a demon king. And I like it. It's very at first it's very fantasy, very normal RPG-ish type thing.
Yeah.
And you have to go and find the 2 warriors that fought the demon, decades ago. And one's hiding in a cabin, doesn't want to talk to anybody. And the other is a monk that's in solitude also. And his name is Uranus for some reason. And it's actually it's not none of the chapters are that long, but it's a good little chapter. There's a huge twist as it progresses. So you get these 2 characters, and you have to go up, and you finally go to the demon castle to fight the demon, and it's a really cool little chapter.
Yeah, I remember really liking it. I remember I think because it was you're getting near the end, right? We're getting near the final chapter, and I guess we'll talk about it. Just the twist of who the Demon King is, I thought was really, really cool. And just kind of how, gosh, wait, I could be totally wrong here, but I remember it's you, right? Yeah, you become the new Demon King.
Yes, because what happens is he goes up there, you defeat the Demon King, then one of the heroes you're with says, oh, the demon's not strong enough for some stupidity. And you don't find the princess because you don't check the secret entrance in the statue. And so you guys go to leave. The hero dies, the old hero, from he's just too weak from the fight. And the wizard that you fought with in the competition in the very beginning of this chapter, who you beat, who joined you, stays behind and dies, in quotations, when the roof collapses. What he really does is he opens up the statue, found the secret, and goes and rescues the princess while you go back to town with only the monk, and the hero had died and Strabo had died. And they think that okay. And then as you're sleeping, you're all sad because you didn't save the princess. You end up getting woken up in the middle of the night, and you go to the king, and you see the demon that you just got done fighting and beating, and you go and you fight the demon, and you kill him in one hit because it's the king. You killed the king.
Yeah.
And that's when everything kind of hits the fan because they see that he killed the king. And they're like, oh, he's a murderer. And then they think you're the demon. So you get thrown out of town, and he loses everything.
Gosh,
and it isn't until you do a couple, you have to go and find the monk. Go back to the castle. They throw the monk in prison with you. The monk sacrificed himself to get you out of prison, and you have to run away again. And you go back to the demon castle, and that's when you find out that the wizard that you were with, your partner, put the spell on you to make you kill the king and turn you into a villain. He betrayed you because he wanted the princess.
God, what a cool! Yeah, I remember just being blown away by that back in the day, and that was the twist that stuck with me. And then how that, of course, leads into the final chapter with you fighting the Demon King.
So what it shows him become, because after he's been branded as a traitor and a monster, you have to kill the mage. He's like, you know what? He's like, people are evil, and he becomes the Demon King. And in one of the rooms of this temple, you see all these statues, and the statues are all the bosses that you fought in the different campaigns. So I think it shows that he is the OD things that you're fighting. That's him. He's all of them, essentially controlling them.
Yeah.
And then when you finish this chapter, you end up getting a choice, which leads into the final chapter of what character you want to play. And this is where you can choose. There's two different endings. If you choose Orsteed, you get the bad ending, which is just Orsteed fighting each of the bosses by himself from the game. And then he's like, I'm the Demon King, and something like that. And it says bad. It says bad ending.
Yeah, I never did that one. So
you know this thing. I did it just to do it. I think I did it originally because I liked Orsteed. When I first played this game, I did it this playthrough just because I wanted to see it to say that one sentence about it.
Yeah.
The real final chapter is where you pick any of the other characters, and then you start off in the Orsteed's world, the medieval chapter in that town, but everything is different. Everything is colored differently, has like a fog over it. I think it's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I remember it just being kind of like just shrouded in darkness is kind of the best way I say it. But yeah.
It's really cool.
It is. And then, so we're on the final chapter, and yes. I'm like, God, I don't remember because it's been such a long time. I remember I put the Akira in my team. Do you remember who your team was?
I can tell you who my team was this playthrough. I picked Oboro to start with because he's the fastest runner, so I picked him to start with. And then I went and got Akira, Masasuru, and I can't remember who else I had. I just beat this game 2 days ago.
Yeah, it's hard to remember the team you fight with.
And Pogo. I had Pogo because the guide recommended Pogo. It recommended Oboro. It recommended either Masasaru or the monk. And then it recommended Sunset. Well, actually, it recommended Cube because Cube is the best healer, but I didn't want Cube. I took Akira. I like Akira.
That's right. Yeah, I know. I did have Cube. Yeah.
Cube is the best healer in the game for this, but I just didn't. His whole thing is how you level him. Or not level him, but he doesn't level up. You have to get parts for him, so it all depends on how you play it. But the thing that's interesting about this chapter is depending on who you pick, you start in a different spot wherever they would start.
Oh, that's right.
And you have to go and find your whole team members again.
Yeah.
Because they're all off.
They're like around the village, right?
They're all in different spots. Masasaru is in prison. You have to go to the jail cell in the castle. Oh, and so that's another thing that's interesting. It's like depending on Akira's passed out in the town, so he's easy to find. Cube is up on top of a roof, but he doesn't work at first. You have to find parts to put him back together. Sunset is the hardest one to get, where you have to find him in 8 different places and talk to him, and he'll move each place after you talk to him until you can finally get him.
I remember definitely using a guide for this.
Yeah, I mean, you're supposed to get the true ending, which I, dumbass, didn't do. You're supposed to get every character to join you. I did all but 2 because I didn't feel like getting Cube or Sunset. I'm just like, I need to finish this game.
Oh yeah,
I kind of regret it because you have to just get them in your party, then you can get rid of them and go find your other guy. Which all the other characters go to the same spots. They're easy to find.
Yeah,
if you know where to look, which I did, but I just didn't do it.
Time.
Yeah, I was running really late in this game, and I'm like, I gotta beat this for the show.
So, is there? All right. The thing that I remember most about the game in general is the final battle. Is there a dungeon leading up to the final battle? I don't remember it.
Yes. So the final area you're in the medieval chapter. One thing they added is each character has their own special dungeon they have to be with you to go to.
Is that to get their ultimate weapon, or
to get their ultimate weapon and really good equipment?
Yeah.
Each place is kind of based on them as a character. Like, so I did 6 of the 8, or 6 or 5 of the 7. I think 5 of the 7. Like Oboro's is in the town. You go in different buildings. Would each be different entrances. You have to fight ninjas to get keys, and as you get these keys, you unlock doors, and you progress through this place to finally get his legendary sword sitting on a table. But it's annoying as hell, but it's cool. One of the other ones I did is Akira's, where only way to get to Akira is by accident. You have to teleport because you have the ability to teleport in this game as Akira, where that's his version of run. He'll teleport, and sometimes when you teleport, you'll end up in his dungeon. and you have to go with his dungeon. You just run through. But the thing about every dungeon, their weapon is sitting on a table, whatever their weapon is. Like for Akira, it's a glove sitting on a table that you grab a glove, and you get teleport out of the dungeon. And it's just really cool to see these little icons sitting on a table, and that's how you. And I did the monk's dungeon, which is just he breaks open a stone that you have to use different of his. You have to pick which one of his abilities you use to break these different stones open, and then you just run through a maze and fight monks that fall in love with you for some reason. Like they literally see you, they go, "Oh my god, Oboro!" And they get little hearts. It was really stupid, but it was funny. And it could serve no purpose. Nothing happened in the battle. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
In the caveman one, you have to sniff a certain area to find this hidden rock, and he'll punch the rock, and then he'll find his weapon, which is a bone axe or something. Sunsets is a time chapter, I guess. I didn't do it, but that's what I was reading.
Yeah.
It's really cool that they have these different things in there.
And I only did I can't remember. I only did one or two. I was kind of like, at the time, I was like wanting to get to the final battle because I was like right there.
I know when I played this before, either I A, never beat this game, or B, I stopped at this point and just leveled and never did. But I know I never did the dungeon before.
Okay. Well, so I guess if you're ready, we can discuss the final battle.
Just about. The only other thing I do want to say, there are two optional bosses in the secret area. One is a giant fish that kicked my ass, and then one I didn't even bother to fight.
I remember the fish. I never touched it. I was just like, no.
He's hard. He's hard as hell. I tried, and he just kicked my ass. I'm like, okay, I'm done.
It's good bosses, have them in there.
Well, it's a normal RPG trend where you have you have a secret boss that's way harder than the final boss of the game. But yeah, that's fine. You say we can talk about the ending, the ending area.
So, because the final battle I remember this now that I'm seeing a picture of the final battle and I'm remembering. Did you ever Undertale spoilers? Did you ever play Undertale?
No,
you never did. Okay, so Toby Fox, the creator of Undertale, I know one of his big inspirations for it is Live A Live, and I remember, and I remember him saying that. And just being like, okay, obviously Earthbound inspiration as well. But I remember playing there's a very specific part of Undertale, and I was like, this is the Live A Live thing. This is how he's inspired by it. And I believe it's the final battle, because that what kind of stayed with me the most in Live A Live for some reason. I guess probably the last part of the game is just how it stuck. But it's such a cool, of course, being able to choose the characters that you bring in that you've garnered over the entire game and how each one basically has its own ability. I just loved that. And just it's obviously very different from a standard traditional JRPG where it's like, hey, your 4 teams, that you've had through the entire game. Here they are. But it's like these characters are obviously from different timelines and you've been with each individual and how they have a different story. And just how they come together and how then that fight works. I remember I did have a little bit of trouble with him. I remember I think I save scummed it back in the day. I just
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I saved state. I just was like, okay, hit me here, no load state, and I just eventually just took him down. Yeah, but I just really like the design of this final boss. Very as obviously dark, evil dark angel style going on.
Yeah, it's very good, and when your characters end up seeing the statues of all the villains that they fought, I like that too because they go in that same room and they'll see all the statues.
Yeah, that's right. Can't you interact with them too? Just
I think you can talk to them and they'll say something about the ones that they oh, I fought this guy.
Yeah.
So if they're in your party, I think, which is kind of cool. And then the final boss fight is really weird as fuck.
It is super weird. It's the strangest part.
So you end up you fight Orsteed, who's now the Demon King, and it's a boss fight that makes me think of a lot of Final Fantasy VI in a way because it's a giant mouth and 2 eyes. I don't know why it just made me think of Kefka, but it did. Yeah, and then a creature that's hidden by wings that you can't touch. Apparently, if you want to, you can actually fight him when he's covered in wings, where he won't do some of his attack, and you only hit him for 1 hit point. He has 900 some health, and you can take him out that way. But I wasn't going to do that. That seems stupid.
Yeah.
But if you take out the 2 eyeballs and the mouth, he ends up opening up and going to the center of the screen, and that's the true final fight.
Yeah.
Of this monk looking thing. You're supposed to be Orsteed in a flower with wings.
Yeah.
He's powerful though.
It's just super strange, and the game is Gosh, I guess you could say the entire game itself is strange, but it's like a different kind of weird, you know? But
It's a cool fight though. I mean, it's a cool final boss fight. He can do a lot of damage though.
yeah.
He messed me up during this fight. Another thing we hadn't talked about in the combat: if a character dies in combat, they fall down. A little halo goes above their head, and there's no Phoenix Down in this game. You can heal them with any item that you want to use or any healing ability, and they'll come back to life. But if the enemy hits them before you heal them, they are out of that battle.
That's right. Yeah, and you can reviving them. I remember is kind of easy.
Just use any item. Any healing thing will bring them back. There's no need to do anything special.
Oh yeah, I remember liking that.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely nice. It's not a bad thing.
But yeah, overall, I just remember the final battle just sticking with me. Kind of its weird imagery, you know. And overall, just had I think it wrapped it up quite nicely. I did get the true ending. Lord, I don't remember much of it though. I just remember being kind of just happy.
So after you beat the final boss fight, there's another boss fight depending on whatever characters that were in your party at the time that when you or not any character that you had went and found during this time, they go and fight their final boss fight from their chapter all over again. But this time they're by themselves if they had a partner.
Yeah.
And for me, I only had to fight 5 of the 7, which I kind of regretted not doing the other 2, but I would have had to level up the other 2 if I would have done them. Or at least one of them I would have had to level up. So that was kind of cool to see that. And they fight their final bosses all over again by themselves and beat all their final bosses. And then the game ends and you see a different ending depending on what characters that each character that you rescued has a little ending.
Yeah.
Pogo has a baby with the girl, and then the monkey has like 8 babies with other monkeys, and just little things like that. It's cute.
Yeah, I remember it just being a nice little happy ending.
I mean, Cube ends up seeing it, which I didn't see the Cube part because I didn't have him in my party. He ends up at some computer core with the corporal, and the guy that made him is still alive. And it's cool that they did this. And Masaru, the wrestler, is just training, and then he leaves. That's it.
Yeah.
It's definitely interesting though that they had these little chapters in the end of the game.
Yeah. It all ties together really nicely to something that's truly special that unfortunately we have not had since.
No. And then the final little scene that you get for this true ending is you see all the characters as silhouettes are running towards the sunset.
That's the scene I remember. Okay, I was thinking.
I didn't get that because I didn't get 2 of the characters, but I kicked myself for. You know, just like, I don't got time.
Yeah.
I had time, but it's busy. But yeah, that's Live a Live.
Man, just going through the whole thing is like an onrush of memories for me. And
it's a good game.
Yeah, just how special it really is. And it's sad that Square hasn't done anything with it.
No, and I don't think Square will ever. I honestly don't see this getting re-released.
You don't think so?
No, they could have done it so many times. Just throw it on the eShop. They just there must be some reason that's holding them back. Maybe they just don't think it's worth it to translate it and edit stuff or whatever they feel they need to. They just don't care. It's not a brand they're trying to, push.
I guess it's just, I get it. I see Saga coming out like with pretty solid, consistent new releases and remakes, and I'm like, why? Why is Saga getting? Saga is fine, but it has a lot of problems that it's too experimental for me. But like, Live a Live is good. It's like, I think it's solid all around. It's experimental, but I also don't think it's inaccessible in the way that Saga games can be.
Like, I played a lot of Saga Frontier for PlayStation 1, and like, for example, that game, if you level too much in that game, that is not a good thing because the bosses will level up with you. It doesn't have the traditional RPG mechanics that this game had.
So I got Saga Frontier for the PS1, like back in 20 whatever. Whenever Kotaku wrote an article about it, about how the final boss doesn't actually end, and that's when I bought it off eBay, and I played it there. And I just remember booting it up, and I was just like, literally, the entire world is open to you immediately, and I was just kind of like, oh, this is too much.
It's a very complicated game.
Yeah, and more power to it for being experimental, but there's a way to do it that I think Live a Live does, and it does in a way that like doesn't hurt the player. It doesn't. There definitely is player experimentation, like obviously going around and trying different things, but in the way that Saga is just kind of like, hey, you're just gonna die, or you're just not gonna find out where to go. Whereas like Live A Live is more or less like, hey, you might get a cool item, you might, unlock something or see something new. It doesn't punish you for experimenting, where I think Saga does.
Yeah, that's why I've always had a hard time with Saga Frontier. Like, I'm a big fan of it, and they remastered it recently, and I've been just tempted to buy that because I'm sure there's quality of life improvements in that game. Because I love this series because of this game, even though I know it's not part of the Saga series. I like a game where I can choose different characters to start with, where their stories have something sort of to do with each other. I like that idea.
Totally.
And I love Square, so.
I did buy the Saga Frontier remaster. It's a gorgeous remaster. They really touched up on a lot, and I had a good time with it. I probably will go back to it one day. It is so just doesn't hold your hand, doesn't tell you anything about how anything's going on. So it's like following a guide and kind of being like even the guide is super like, make sure you don't do this or make sure you go here. And it's just like, even the guide is talking riddles, and the game's confusing when even the guide is like confusing you.
Yeah.
In recent Saga games, Saga Scarlet Grace is solid. At least it holds your hand a little bit more. In other words, it teaches you how to play the game first.
Which is always nice.
Yeah, I think the artwork is where Saga excels. Though cannot remember that the artist's name, but man, Saga's artwork is incredible. But yeah.
Okay. And we were talking about earlier, like there had like Romancing Saga, I think 2 or 3 have been brought back since then, but this game has not ever been translated or re-released, or re-released, but not over here, unfortunately.
I do think this would do well. Like, I think Square is more on the ball when it comes to making money than like Nintendo is, and I think you could release this on a Switch, like prettied up, and it would sell like crazy.
If you need to pretty it up, just retranslate it and throw it out there.
Yeah. I mean, heck, if Moon came out, in America in this day and age, then so can Live A Live.
I would have bought it.
Yeah, I would buy it.
No, they re-released it. I would buy it 100% just to see the actual, like, what the translation is supposed to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine with what we got, but I wouldn't mind seeing the actual, like, what they feel that we're supposed to have.
Yeah. And it's just one of, as of now, it's just one of Square's just IPs just sitting there. And the way, I'm not sure but Square had a Japanese exclusive online mecha battling game, kind of like Gundam Versus, but not. That's just the best way to describe it. But it was Japan exclusive, and in that game, you could purchase Xenogears X. And that was the last time they'd ever touched the IP. And,
what was this game called?
Oh gosh, a quick Google search will help me.
I've always been a fan of tracking down Square's different Japanese-only games that came out. Like, I played a few of their SNES ones, like Treasure of the Rudrash, which I've never finished yet, but on my list. And I've also played Treasure Hunter. I tried Treasure Hunter G, but I didn't get very far, and I played a lot of Bahamut Lagoon.
I never played Bahamut Lagoon, really. I was always curious about that.
Good game. Hard, but good game. But due to emulation, you can experience those games now. They're out. There's translations there.
Yeah.
That was a Front Mission 5 game that we never got.
Really? I never played Front Mission. Listen, the only Front Mission game I've ever played was Front Mission Evolved.
I played that too. Front Mission is long and a little hard to get into.
Yeah, it's mechs. Also, I found it. It's
Front Mission Online?
Sorry, what?
Was it Front Mission Online?
No. It was it's a game called Figureheads.
Huh.
Shut down in 2018, but I think Square just has a lot of weird Japanese like exclusive stuff that just kind of like, I think they tested and just dropped. But yes, this game Figureheads had Xenogears mechs in it. And it was free to play, so probably in gacha mechanics or something.
I would have paid.
Yeah, I would have too. Square did figures for Ellie, Faye, and Watal not too long ago, and I purchased Faye and Watal, but eventually I'll purchase Ellie.
I've seen those.
Anyway, getting off topic. Love Xenogears, love Live A Live. Square, Square is weird, right? They live their own world. But they do know how to make money. I think they know how to make money now. Back in 2013, Final Fantasy 13 trilogy Square, I don't think knew how to make money, but I think they know how to make money now. Like, I love 13. But
it's not a bad game.
No, I actually like that whole trilogy a lot, but I think
I unfortunately have not finished it.
Really,
I only beat 13.
Hey, that's probably need. That's 2 and Lightning Returns are very weird.
I played 20 minutes, or I played a few hours of 13.2 until I found a glitch where I could not progress through the game because I went into a room and didn't grab an item because the game didn't make me, and then I could not play the game any farther.
Oh, dang.
So I have never finished it.
Sucks. Well, I mean, as far as on the live side of things, the Xeno series is at least living on happily, more popular than ever, even if it can't technically, be the same series. At least Xenoblade is living on more successful than ever.
And I'm happy about that, even though I never played any of those series yet.
Oh, you never played? Oh, it's so good.
Someday.
Yeah, one day. They're long as heck.
That's why I haven't played them.
Yeah.
All right. I want to go to questions, comments, and memories. I actually do have a few things to say. People did comment. Not very many. Not very many at all. First one from the RPG Lovers Worldwide Unite group. I got one from Lucas Seward. God, I missed the time when Square was producing one banger after the other.
Yeah, back in the day.
And I watched the entire Overblood Super Replay. First one from Michael Tolan. This is one of those games they actually should have ported but never did. Yeah. I agree, as I've said before. This, especially now that I find out that it had a Wii U release and it had a release. This game exists. Just port it.
Yeah, like you have the right. It kind of
bothers me.
You made money off it during like the Wii U's time. You can make money off it now.
Yeah, they put it in the 3DS eShop, so that means you have the code. You have the game itself. Just translate it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's not that simple. I know it costs money, but it's still, I feel like it can't be that expensive to translate a game. But yeah, I don't really know.
The Switch is a moneymaker, like you put anything, like especially a classic you put a classic JRPG on the Switch. It's like, I mean, heck, Square does this stuff. I'm sorry, we know with the pixel perfect remaster.
Yes.
Of course they don't know how to make money.
I mean, this could easily be re-released for $10, $15. You could sell it in maybe 10. 10, you could easily sell this in unreleased Super Nintendo RPG from Squaresoft and makers of Final Fantasy. Yeah, throw it on the eShop on Nintendo Switch. It would sell. I would buy it.
Oh yeah, you make buckets that way.
I guess it's not enough.
Yeah, but
okay. And the one other question to read from this group is from Ron Huntone. Well, you're going to need to answer this question. What the hell is this?
Yeah. We hope we answered it.
Yes. An RPG that is really good that never came to America, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's it's up there. There's so many. There's so many really classic games that never came to America, and it's like Live A Live is one of them. It's like, yeah.
I'm bummed that it never came. I'm bummed more people can't experience it. And
I still have hope. If Saga is getting love, then maybe one day Live A Live will get that.
More hopeful than I am. Funny question, or funny comment, I should say, memory. So back when Final Fantasy Chronicles came out, Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger, I remember talking to some random guy at Babbage's, and we were talking. He's like, "Oh, I hope that they make another Final Fantasy thing or something or some other collection for PS1. They put Secret Man." I'm like, "They should put Live A Live on." And I was talking about this game because I just played it. Remember the guy just looking at me like, "What the hell are you saying?" And it's just funny to me that at that time that Mike thought that there would ever be a chance they'd put this game on a PS1 thing. Like, come on.
And that's never changed. That people still have the same reaction. What the hell is this?
Yep. And I bring it up. I bring it up quite often. I have talked about this game a little bit on the show before, and I talk about this game to people I met.
Yeah.
I really like this game. All right. And then I have a couple comments from the RPG Collective group. First one from Jim Lowe. Is it pronounced Live A Live or Live Alive? I guess however you want to pronounce it, because we both have pronounced it 2 different ways.
Whatever you feel like in that time.
Or one guy says, I always pronounce it Live Alive, because that's how it sounds.
Live Alive.
I've always said Live Alive, as I've said throughout this entire episode.
Live Alive. Yeah, it's changed for me. Just like...
It's hard to say, because there is no pronunciation of it. Not like anyone's ever said it in English that, made the game, so...
Yeah, Square, get on it so we know how to pronounce it.
From Ahmed Fazi Hassan. So it's exclusive in Japan. Yes, but there are other ways to play it. Well, only other ways to play it in America. And from Jewry Loonberger. Tried the Ninja chapter and failed. Then tried the Cowboy chapter and failed. But I think it's a very interesting concept, but I don't like the battle system. Too confusing. One day I will finish it.
Interesting.
You're missing out. I can understand that.
Huh. Maybe it's just kind of tackling the battle system and thinking it's deeper than it actually is. I don't know. Because I don't... Huh. Maybe
It's a little deeper. And, well, one of the problems is nothing's explained. Like, the abilities aren't really explained.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
A lot of trial and error to know what does what. I mean, they will give you a description like, oh, there's a fire attack, but it's not like a very good description.
Yeah. I drop games so quickly if they don't like at least kind of tell me a little bit of what's going on. Just in terms like I have a lot of games it's just kind of like I struggle with of like it's just a lot of what's the PC games, just like weird little Steam stuff that I can't think of the name. Things like Outward are games that just drop you in there and they're like, here's a world and just good luck, figure it out. Those frustrate me so much, but I love them so much. It's just like I wish they were more accessible for me. But I always thought that Live They Live was pretty. I didn't think it was too confusing, but maybe it's just maybe it's who you start with. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a lot about who you start with. I mean, for me, my friend had found this first and was playing it until he was able to explain a little bit of what we were doing when I started playing it. And we both started with the Wrestler, which is very straightforward battle.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, if I start with Cube, heck, that's like
you'll be into a very different game.
Yeah.
And I have two comments left to read from the Super Nintendo Super Group from Holden M. I haven't finished it. I just have a file in limbo after doing the Robot, Caveman, and Ninja. I played Robot first, and I'm glad I did. To me, even as a standalone or intro sequence, that was a masterful experience.
Totally.
Which we had talked about earlier. Like, something that when I first played it, I didn't like it. Then, wow, is it good now when I replayed it? And last comment from Robbie Cans. A buddy of mine on Instagram makes high-quality repros of Super Famicom games. Okay.
Cool.
I'm actually glad that people, especially with something like this, I'm glad that somebody's doing it because somebody will play this game for the first time because of that port. And I'm okay with that. Because if it's, I don't agree with piracy in certain aspects, but when it comes to something like this, that it doesn't exist in America and is not re-released, if that's the way that you experience this game in America is by getting a repo cart of somebody, fine. You know?
It's like we would pay money if we could, like Square, the wallet's ready for you, but they don't want it. So it's like, okay.
They don't want to put the investment in thinking, for the loss.
Yeah.
Or it just isn't worth the trouble for them to hire people to make, they're only going to make, 30% off what they put in. Not worth it, maybe, or something of that nature.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like they would be surprised at how much money they'd make from it, but.
Yeah, I mean, unless maybe it didn't sell great when it came out in the Wii U Virtual Console, or when they released it in the 3DS shop the year after, so it must have not been too bad.
I want to look at, I don't know how I would find this, but I want to look at Moon, that RPG, and how well that sold here. Super. Have you heard of Moon?
Yeah, I played Moon. Moon's a good game.
Yeah, I just, in terms of, I feel like that is a level of obscure and a level of weird that even, that goes beyond Live They Live. So I feel like if that sold well, heck, Okay,
I lied. I didn't play Moon RPG. I played To the Moon. I know what this is, though. I never played it.
Yeah, no, Moon, super, super weird, and I feel like if that made money, then Live a Life could make money easily.
Yeah, because I've heard nothing. I heard a lot of weird shit about Moon.
Yeah, hey, I think it'd be a good episode for you one day. I never finished it, but it's pretty. It's another one of those games that inspired Undertale, and kind of a lot of about Undertale's vibes come from Moon. It's a very positive look at humanity.
Only 15 and a half hours. That's not that bad, because this game was 17, it said, and how long to beat, and that's how I judge things.
Well, hey, that's a good way to do it. Games are too long for me now, so.
Same. Now that I do this podcast, I can't play too long of games.
Yeah, I get it.
All right, so that brings us to our last section, to shelf, stack, or box. Shelf means something you really like. Stack means something kind of like the gray area that you like, but you just don't want to display it. And box means something you disliked. And I'll go first. This is obviously going to go on the shelf for me. I have played this. I have loved this game since I first played it back in early 2000s, and I still really enjoy it. It is still such a really good little RPG. It's hard, and it has some parts that are a little frustrating at times, but it's a really cool little game, and I'm so glad I got to replay it. And I'm hoping that by us talking about it, somebody out there is now going to Google online and find it and play it on their phone or PC. I'm hoping that somebody's encouraged to try out this game.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's going on the shelf, and I'm so glad we got I found someone that was willing to talk about it with me because I couldn't find it.
Hey, I'm glad I could be here to talk about it. And of course, I would shelf this with a special edition and figures. It's such a weird, lovely game. Obscure JRPGs are my favorite thing. They're so strange, they're so good, and they're so much fun. Whenever you find a little hit that still holds up, in my opinion, really well today, that I think it's hard to find a 16. Well, actually, a lot of 16-bit JRPGs hold up, but I think when you find one that does something different that you play today, and you're still kind of like, I haven't played anything like this. If you're able to find a game like that, that's special in and of itself. But the fact that it does so much beyond than just being unique is what I think makes this game really special.
Yeah, it's definitely a one-of-a-kind type of game.
Yeah.
And that's really great.
Square, it's up to you now.
And before we get into plugs, where can people find you at again?
I am over... Okay, I guess first I am at Chris Persona 1 on Twitter. My whole group, my whole little YouTube channel group is The Pretentious Nerds. Just type it out on Google or YouTube and we'll come up.
Link in the show notes too.
Sweet, thank you. We do basically anything, everything. So my friend does anime and kind of just like anime stories. I have another friend there who does movie analysis, really in-depth, crazy stuff. I am the expert consultant, basically all things video games. I play every single game imaginable that I can, even sports games. I have put that in there. JRPGs are my thing, though. I've been doing crazy stuff. I just did a video on the Shadowverse card game demo on Switch. Really cool. We did a Scarlet Nexus video where my friend watched the anime and I had already played the game, so we kind of compared notes. Check that out. But we're Pretentious Nerds on YouTube.
Okay. And I should introduce what we're going to be talking about next week. So next week is also my pick. We're going to be talking about Pikmin 2 for GameCube.
Oh, Pikmin 2.
Because I've never played it and I need an excuse to finally play it.
There you go. Did you play Pikmin 3?
No.
Okay, time to get into the Pikmin series then.
I played Pikmin 1 not last year, over a year ago for the show. I played Pikmin 1. So this will be my first time playing Pikmin 2.
Oh, did you like it?
I love Pikmin 1.
Oh, really? Okay. Time to see if 2 is to your liking.
I'm hopeful. I've heard good things about it, so I'm about to start it up today after I get done with this recording. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, Pikmin's a neat little series. So
we'll see. And if you're listening to this still, I also want to let us know that, like I said before, you have one day, if you're hearing this on the day of releases on Sunday, to go do that Patreon poll. I'm going to leave it open until July 3rd my time. Or not July 3rd, August 3rd my time. So that'll be that Tuesday. Once it hits that, I'm closing the poll. So we have a tie, so please go vote. If you're listening to this on the day it came out, you have a day. You can vote what anime movie we're going to be. And then also the anime poll is going to be starting around the same time, too. I'll just throw it up there at the first of the month, and you guys can vote on that. You can decide what pilot test episode we're going to cover, what anime we're going to watch for the first episode of. So definitely go check that out. You can find that for as little as $1. You can vote in our Patreon. So please go to it. And for $10, if you have a podcast or YouTube channel, you can go to our Patreon. I will plug you 4 times in the month and check out your podcast or YouTube channel. So definitely go do that if you want to get a little extra and help us out. And please want to give a shout out to our awesome intro and outro, courtesy of Bobby, aka Mike 20 from ZP Bite the Bullet, Song the Cool Kid Squad. You will see a link in the show note to his YouTube channel. Definitely go check him out. Also want to give a shout out to Bill Tucker, a friend of the show who does the MCU with me. He launched his podcast earlier this year, Gamer Looks at 40. So definitely check that out. You will see a link in the show notes to that too. And please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and on YouTube. We are on YouTube. Just audio, but we're there. So definitely go check us out on there too and hit subscribe. And we will see you guys all next time. Bye, everybody.